Hello and welcome to another episode of The Common Thread. I'm your host, Scott Stone. Imagine sitting in silence for 10 days. No talking, no reading, no writing, no phone, no eye contact, no external distractions. Just you and your mind. 8 to 10 hours of seated meditation, structured silence and stillness with nowhere to go, nothing to consume, no one to perform for. I hadn't gone 10 days without my phone since I got one. And I hadn't gone 10 days without speaking since I learned how to. And I definitely haven't spent that much time in direct observation of my own inner world without an escape hatch. This episode is a raw recap, a log of what actually happened inside me during those 10 days. What surfaced, what cracked open, what resisted, what softened. If you have ever wondered what silence really does to a person or what might be waiting for you underneath the noise, then this episode's for you. Hello and welcome. Thank you for being here and giving me an opportunity to talk about my 10-day Vipassana retreat. I recently completed a 10-day Vipassana retreat here on Maui at a property in Makena on the south shore of Maui called Vipassana. So it's not a traditional Goenka Vipassana. There are some nuances in which I will get into, and for the most part, it was very similar to a 10-day Vipassana retreat. And for all intents and purposes, it was a 10-day Vipassana retreat. And so I just wanted to take a little bit of time, maybe 30, 45 minutes, I'm not sure how long this will go, to give a recap of my experience. And so let's dive in. So a Vipassana retreat is exactly what I said. It's no talking, no reading, no writing, no interaction with other humans, and sitting with yourself for 10 days. And in the case of the Vipassana retreat I went to, there are a number of different things that are not traditional, and we will get into those at some point. Yeah, so let's dive right in. I recently did this. So this was February 1st to the 12th. So 10 full days with an intro and outro of silence. Yeah, so I did this recently, February 1st to the 12th. So 10 full days, the 1st to the 11th, the 2nd to the 11th, and then the 1st and the 12th as the intro and outro to the silence itself. And yeah, traditionally, and in this case as well, a Vipassana retreat, everything is fully provided for you. So your living situation, your food, everything to allow you as much opportunity as possible to fully be with yourself throughout the entire experience, day in and day out. And so I was provided living quarters. I had my own 10 by 12 by 9 Kodiak tent. I had a queen size air mattress. I had a yoga mat, a bolster, and a blindfold, or an eye pillow. And I was responsible to bring, obviously, my clothes, a water vessel, and anything else that I thought would help make me comfortable. Now, I haven't done anything like this or extended seated meditation, so I didn't have the thing like a back jack, which is a seated posture device where you get a back support, right? So the agreements you make in a Vipassana retreat are you will not talk, you will not try and engage with others, you will not give facial expressions, you will commit to sitting for the entire time you are asked to, self-supported. So for all intents and purposes, you do not get a chair. So you're sitting seated posture or kneeling without a back support. I mean, my guess is part of this is the reason is to not fall asleep for the main. But also what I have found, and I will speak on this more, is to learn how to be with the pain that comes up. And there was an incredible amount of pain for me in a lot of the seated postures. Now, a little bit of preparation. So what did I do to get prepared for this retreat? So a couple weeks before the retreat started, I started sitting daily for meditation. I've been meditating for probably 10, maybe 15 years now, but surely not daily. You know, my meditation practice probably has more misses than marks on my report card if I were to even consider measuring how often I was showing up. And so I started doing my best to do it daily, and I went full send. So I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning and I would meditate for an hour. And, you know, most of the time I would check my phone or my watch to see what time it was. And the pain wasn't that bad because I was sitting up against a wall. I was sitting in my bed up against a wall. And so it didn't hurt. And I did it decently consistently, pretty much every day for about we'll say 2 weeks beforehand. The other thing is the food you're provided with is very specific. It's bland, it's non-sugar based. So we were instructed to remove sugar from our diet. And so I started removing sugar in an effort to not have to ride this plummeting roller coaster of sugar dropping in my system. And so let's say a week or two before the Vipassana retreat, I was starting to already be in the experience itself, noticing what was coming up as I started to change my lifestyle to accommodate more of this experience. And for the most part, it was pretty good. It wasn't really that confronting. And I also wasn't practicing things like no talking and no human interaction. So that was really one of the more interesting things that I noticed when I got into the retreat. So February 1st, I get dropped off at the property. And that night, we start Noble Silence. And so Noble Silence just refers to the agreement that you are not going to speak and you are not going to create noise. You are not going to create facial gestures or interact with other individuals. So that night, without us being preemptively warned, we went into Noble Silence. And honestly, the not talking thing wasn't that big of a deal for me. It wasn't really an issue to not speak. So going into the first full day, you wake up at 4:30. There's a bell that rings at 4:30. There's a bell that rings at 4:50. The first bell wakes you up. The second bell lets you know you need to get to the shala to begin your morning practices. So in traditional Goenka Vipassana, there is no music. There is no yin yoga. There is no other things that we'll get to. But those two were something that this specific event has integrated into their experience. So at 5 o'clock in the morning, we would start what was called shake, rattle, and roll. And this was a series of movements to wake up the body, different types of lymphatic drainage aspects of moving the body in a way that's going to awaken it before we sit. We would do that for about 30, 45 minutes. And then we would sit for our first meditation. As the experience starts, we're not sitting for the full hour yet. So we're sitting for half hour, 45 minutes. I don't really know because I turned in my watch when I started. So the Vipassana practice itself is a 10-day silent meditation retreat rooted in an ancient practice that is centered around insight meditation, Vipassana meditation, created by a man named Goenka, and who has since passed. And it has no religious affiliation. It has no dogma. It is a simple practice rooted in awareness where you sit in silence for 10 days to see things clearly, to see them as they really are. That is the literal word translation for Vipassana. And the whole structure of the experience is built in a way to strip away all distractions and uncover what's going on in the subconscious under the guise of illusion and identity that we walk around in. You wake up early. In traditional Vipassanas, you wake up at 4 o'clock. In Vipassana, you wake up at 4:30. You meditate for 8 to 10 hours a day. In Vipassana, it is 8 to 10 hours of seated meditation. There is no yoga. There is no dancing. There is no shake, rattle, and roll. Whereas in Vipassana, there is a little bit more flexibility. There's a little bit more play involved. And we'll get into why. And I actually have a episode releasing probably after this, maybe before, but probably after this, where I go back to the property and I interview the man who runs the foundation, Jorge Yant, and he goes through why he created this the way he did. And either way, these practices, Vipassana, either traditional Vipassana or Vipassana style Vipassana, is built in a way to exhume and extract what's going on under the surface. At the core of it, you're being trained to learn how to feel sensations in the body without immediately reacting to them, without chasing pleasure, pleasantry, without resistance. And I don't think to anybody this sounds simple. And it's funny, right? I told people I was coming to do this, and I didn't give them the full details. I was like, it's 10 days in silence. And a bunch of these people, mostly who are parents, are like, oh my God, I would love this. And I was like, yeah, it's no talking, no reading, no writing, no phone, no nothing, sitting for 10 hours of meditation a day. They're like, never mind, that sounds awful. I was like, yeah, it's not designed to be enjoyable. But the byproduct that arises from this practice is learning how to enjoy your life regardless of circumstance, right? Regardless of what's happening, you learn how to sit at the seat of attention and say, oh, that's a story. Oh, that's a sensation. And let the mind do its thing. And so let's dive into the experience itself. So I arrived on property on February 1st. I was dropped off, and that goes until February 12th. So the 2nd to the 11th is 10 full days in silence. And the 1st and the 12th are the intro and outro to that experience. Now, what are the accommodations? Vipassana Foundation sits on a multi-acred property that butts up against the La Perouse area, the La Perouse Bay of Maui, which sits in a natural regulated preserve that has beautiful volcanic landscapes and some of the best snorkeling on the island. And this property is adjacent to that. And on the property, they set up 40 Kodiak tents so that each person has their own living quarters. And inside those living quarters, you have your own air mattress. You have a table, a chair, and a candle, electric LED candle. In the yogashala itself, where we meditate, you're provided a yoga mat, a yoga bolster, and an eye pillow. And you're responsible to bring everything else, your clothes, your water vessel, and anything you think will help you be comfortable or find some level of enjoyment, like a set of string lights for your tent. But you can't bring any books. You can't bring a journal. You got to turn in your phone. You can't bring any instruments. Well, we'll get to that. It's an experience, And so on the first day, the first thing you do is you turn in your phone, you turn in your journal. I turned in my watch. I gave them everything I thought that would distract me from getting deeper into myself. And then you have some time to acclimate to the property, and then you start going into the experience itself. And that night, you are invited into noble silence. And now noble silence, as I understood it, was the whole no talking thing. But it's also I will not try to communicate with other individuals. I will not try to make noise. And I will stick to that for the 10-day window that I have committed to. And you sign an agreement before we started noble silence, before we weren't allowed to write anymore. And then the experience starts. And that first day we had dinner and we got to meet a couple of the people around. And then that night, they unknowingly, unexpectedly, they start noble silence and no more talking. And then, then the next morning, day one, the first bell goes off at 4:30 to wake you up at 4:30. And by 4:50, the second bell goes off. So you have 20 minutes to get showered, brush your teeth, do whatever you need to do. And at 4:50, when the second bell goes off, you need to get as quickly as you can to the yogashala, where we're going to start our morning practices. Now, in traditional Vipassana, you do not do any sort of movement practices, as I understand it. There's no yin yoga. There's no what I'm about to explain is shake, rattle, and roll. There's none of that. There's only seated meditation. And in this morning practice called shake, rattle, and roll, we start doing movement, mostly lymphatic flush style movements, to move the body, awaken it, and prepare us for our first sit that starts at about 5:30. And so we sit from so we do this morning practice, and then we sit from about 5:30 to either 6 or 6:30. The sits get longer as the experience goes on. So from the beginning, we're doing about 20 to 30 minute sits. And then by the end of the experience, we're doing hour-long sits each time we sit towards the end of the 10 days. And so on the first and second day, it was mostly about getting settled. It was mostly about coming to notice what it's like to not talk, noticing what it's like to not have my phone, noticing what it's like to not know what time it is, noticing what it's like to just be with myself, right? There's a lot of downtime. And early on, the first 4 or 5 days, I slept a lot. I napped pretty much every chance I could. At least in the morning break and the lunch break, I would take a short nap, and I would just kind of be. I would just notice the thoughts that would come in. And I didn't really have any quote unquote issue at that point. There was no rub. There was no resistance really bubbling to the surface. There was a good amount of body discomfort that was happening, but in general, it was tolerable. I could adjust and move. And now granted, one of the things in the practice is to not move, is to notice the sensations in your body and keep breathing. That part was a struggle. So for the first couple of days, you're just focusing on, as far as I remember, the awareness of the breath coming into the nose. And then at maybe day 3 or 4, we start breathing through the nose, and then center point, which is just below the belly button, to co-locate our awareness between multiple parts of our body. Now, this is where it starts to get interesting. On day 3, so one of the things that, like I said, this Vipassana is different than a Vipassana retreat. As my friend once, as I was explaining to my friend, the distinction he gave, it was the difference between a wine seltzer and an Everclear, right? So the difference between a cocktail and straight grain alcohol. This is the difference between Vipassana and Vipassana. And I didn't really know that going in, surely because I haven't done a Vipassana retreat, but also I just didn't know what to expect. And so there were a couple of different events during the day, one of them being Shake, Rattle, and Roll, another one being what they called Running of the Jedis, which was wind sprints across the property before we would do breath work. Breath work itself is not a traditional Vipassana style activity. And we were sitting in meditation. This was after lunch on day 3. So we had sat a couple different times. And they get up to go do Running of the Jedis, to go outside on the lawn and do sprints. And I'm feeling a lot of pain in my body at this point. This is day 3. I've been sitting for multiple hours in meditation by now, and my back is incredibly painful. And everybody starts to get up and leave the yogashala to go run on the property. And I do not want to do this. I get flooded with anger. And I don't really know what's going on. I'm so blended with this emotion. I'm just pure rage. And I don't say anything, but what comes through my mind is the following statement, which was, why the fuck is nobody paying attention to me? And I was directing that anger towards the leader, towards Jorge, because he's the guy that's supposed to take care of the soul experience. And so why is nobody, but especially him, not taking care of me? And in that moment, I realize that as a child, that's how I created significance in my life. Is that if I was in pain, my parents would come running. If my brother was beating me up, my parents would come running. And so I realized in that moment that I'm living in outdated software. That I am still to this day as a 38-year-old adult, still creating pain in my life so that I matter, that I have significance. And in that moment, I realize that not only that, but I also hate the part of me that does that, right? As you may have known by now, I've spent a lot of years in IFS-based therapy. And so distinguishing this part is this part that is keeping me safe. By doing so, I don't like him. I don't like this pain. And am flooded in that moment with a boatload of compassion of like, oh my God, I am so sorry that I am making you wrong for doing something that was so critically important in the formative years of my life. And I just start bawling. Everybody has left the tent. It's just me, maybe one other person. And I'm just sitting there crying at the realization of how much pain I have carried in my life and how desperately I've tried to hold on to it because I've needed it. I've needed it to keep me safe. I've needed it to keep me significant. I've needed it for a certain level of certainty. And I just fall apart and I cry for maybe 15, 20 minutes. I don't know. And I notice after that all the pain in my body has left. I can sit in meditation perfectly still. It doesn't hurt at all. And that's when I start wondering, what else is this retreat about? What else am I here to learn? And it continues to get interesting day in, day out. Day 4, I had one of the most interesting experiences and awarenesses about how thoughts really work. And there's a part of me that doesn't really want to share this, but I'm committed to truth. I'm committed to vulnerability. I'm committed to transformation. And so I will. On day 4, I could not stop thinking about sex, specifically with men. Now, if you know anything about my story, you'll know I experienced a good amount of sexual trauma in my childhood, and it was all with men. and I did not enjoy it, at least in my mental landscape. My body enjoyed it, but my physical, like my ego didn't, especially as I grew up. Like I was shamed by my brother for it. You know, it's the first thing we're called in middle school and elementary. Oh, you're gay, you're a faggot, like all these things, right? And so there was a lot of resistance around this experience. And so there's a host of beautiful women at this experience. And so I think what had happened was, you know, the first couple of days I see these women, I'm starting to get excited in my body because of these beautiful humans. I got nothing else to do but look at other humans. And so, you know, I noticed that. I probably get excited. And then on day 4, what starts coming up from under the shadow is this experience. And I can't get away from it. I cannot stop thinking about sex with men in every form, position, all of it, perspective. Like it's just there. And I'm doing everything I can to stop it. I'm fidgeting, I'm moving, I'm changing my breath. I'm trying to breathe really hard in breath work. Like there's nothing I can do to get out of it. And I sit in that for something like 6, maybe 8 or 10 hours. It just kept coming. And finally, at the end of the day, I give up. I surrender. And I'm like, look, if this needs to be part of my life, if this is part of my karma, that I'm supposed to have sex with men, so be it. I guess that's, you know, I made peace with it. And I just watched this thought just trail out and leave my awareness. And I'm like, wait, what? That's it? And it was like, well, yeah. You see, this thought was flying across your awareness, and then you grabbed it. And I took it down here and I looked at it, and I tried to dissect it and pick it apart and understand it and get to know it. But all I was doing was staring at it for 6 to 8 hours. And the moment I made peace with it, the moment I was equanimous, I created equanimity, right? Which is nothing other than saying being cool with it. The moment I was cool with it, it left. It was gone. And I was like, wait, what? And it's like, yeah, that's how these thoughts work, dude. And I was just mind blown of like, okay, I wonder why I got this lesson. And then day 5 happens. And day 5's going great. I mean, you know, still sitting with the pain in my body. My back still really hurts, all this stuff. And then, and a humongous storm is rolling into town from the ocean. Heavy rainfall. Oh, by the way, one of the days I left my windows open in my tent and it rained all over my clothes. So like that was, I think, the first day, you know, just like, anyway, we don't have to go into that, but that was interesting to notice how I felt about that. And on the 5th day, when the storm rolled into town, the energy was starting to pick up. You could tell there was concern about, you know, did the tent's going to blow away, and you know, what's going to happen and all this stuff. And so you could feel the agitation. You could feel the angst in the air. And the day went on. The day was normal, so to speak. But what was interesting is what happened in the middle of the night. I woke up at who knows when, because I don't have a watch, I don't have a clock, I have none of that. But I woke up in the middle of the night and very clearly woke up with thoughts of last year, 2025's suicidal ideation, little dark night of the soul that I had, and which I've spoke about on other podcasts. But in essence, all these thoughts of, holy crap, like I almost took myself out last year. It was almost exactly a year later too, the Vipassana retreat. So it was well timed as an anniversary of like, wow, that almost happened. And very clearly through my body came the words, go in the yogashala. And I'm like, what? And my body's like, go in the yogashala. And, you know, I've done enough of this work now that when my body speaks, I listen. So I put my clothes on. I walked out of my tent, crossed the property over to the yogashala, and climbed under the walls because they had dropped them for the storm. So I had to climb under the tent walls to get inside. And I sat on my yoga mat. And as soon as my butt touched my bolster, the voice inside me says, now we can begin. And I start bawling, wailing, like audibly wailing cries And like part of it I could see, part of it was just feeling coming through me, but it was the grief that my body had held for a year and now is releasing at the realization that I almost ended my life, and how sad that would have been, how I would have never met some of the most incredible people I have so blessed to have in my life now. And I don't say this egotistically, but like that they would not have gotten to experience my gifts, my contribution, my impact to their lives. That certain people in my life would be devastated, unrecoverably devastated at the realization that I took myself out. And I sat there for probably what was half hour, and just released over and over. I brought a towel with me. I was crying so much. I knew I was going to be crying. I brought a towel and literally probably blew my nose 30 times, just covered in snot. And I just let myself release. And then at one point, my body, I caught my breath. I could breathe again. And my body says, okay, you can go to bed now. What, that's it? Yeah, go to bed. So I get up, I walk back to my tent, I get back in bed, and I instantly fall asleep. And then the next 2 days, similarly, like resting, sleeping, still in a lot of pain, but just again, kind of low key days, nothing too interesting, just going through the motions of, okay, this is what we do, like we get up and this is what happens. I would say during day 6 and 7, there was this part that would come in that was like, okay, I'm still in a lot of pain. So is this going to work? Like, am I going to be okay? And what I really got from that was the opportunity to be with those sensations and be with those parts of me and say, hey, I don't know if this pain's ever going to go away, but I will be with you through it all. And then on day 8, one of the most beautiful things that has ever happened in my entire life happened. I had a full out of body psychedelic experience where I was laying. So on the property, there are these large gazebos. And inside these gazebos are these floating daybeds. They're circular queen-size mattresses that are hanging from trapezes. And you can lay on these daybeds and have some time in between the breaks. And after, I think it was breakfast maybe, or maybe lunch, I was laying on one of these daybeds. And in a moment, I somatically feel me rocking ever so slightly, not very far, a couple inches each way. And I am instantly transported back into my childhood, where I am witnessing my mom. I'm laying in my mom's lap, and she's singing me Itsy Bitsy Spider, and she's rocking me in her lap. And she's doing this little thing with her fingers where she's going, Itsy Bitsy Spider went up the water spout. Down came the rain and washed the spider out. And when she says out, this little thing with her fingers tickles me in my belly, and I burst into ecstatic joy and laughter. And in that moment, I, in every cell of my body, realize I had a good childhood. Not I think I had a good childhood, not I might have had a good childhood, not even I believe I had a good childhood. Period. I had a good childhood. Sure, there were moments that were really hard, and a lot of them. Yes, got it. And I declare in that moment, I had a good childhood. And I can feel this rewire the cells of my body. And in that moment, previously, my earliest memory was when I was 5 years old. My parents were fighting so loud that I called the police on them. And in that moment, that became my new earliest childhood memory. I have spent years in therapy and otherwise in an attempt to reclaim the innocence of my childhood. And moments like this help me realize I'm doing it. And in a way, it's done. It was one of the most profound things that happened to me without question. And like a lot of these experiences I could never have gotten to without sitting for days at a time in silence with no distractions, nothing around me to distract me. It was so interesting because that day I had been making so many breakthroughs. At this point, I'm on fire now. I'm like, okay, when we get out of here, we're going full send. We're launching it all. We're going for it. All this stuff. And then this woman that I met on Halloween that I haven't really shared about, but this woman that I met on Halloween that just so deeply felt like I knew her in 10 past lives. Like that we have spent many years together, like instantly happened. And she showed up for a day sit. So at Vipassana, you can come for a single day sit if you've already sat before. And she was there all of a sudden, and I was just speechless. I mean, I already couldn't talk, but I didn't know what to do. I was like, oh my God, how is this possible? This woman just showed up here, and what do I do with this? And I started making barters with God of like, okay, if I can have her still, I'll give up everything. I won't go after these things. I won't explore these parts of me, whatever it is. And I remember looking at myself and being like, bro, what are you doing right now? This woman isn't even into you. And here I am trying to convince myself that she is. And in that moment, I realize that there is a part of me that has the belief I want what I can't have, and I can't have what I want. And in a moment, I realize that that's the way I live my life. That the things that I want, I believe I can't have them. And I go after things I can't have to prove that I'm not worthy enough to have the things that I want. And in that moment, I realize she's not into me, and I'm not into her anymore because she's not into me. And I want what I want, and I want what wants me. And apparently this isn't it. And I let go of that longing for her and free myself from this pattern of trying to prove myself and my worthiness in the world. And it was one of the most liberating things I've ever experienced, because I literally said when I met her, I told my parents, I told my mom, I was like, I think I'm going to marry this girl. And I've never even hung out with her. There was something so deeply visceral about meeting her, I cannot even put it into words. And she'll probably never even hear this podcast. And that's okay. And yeah, just to realize what my subconscious mind was creating and how my life was then fulfilling upon it was incredible. And then, yeah, day 9 and day 10 were just smooth sailing, just chilling, just enjoying it, enjoying the food, enjoying the time. Honestly, it was like I did the thing. The real thing was that, like, one of the patterns that I've been breaking over the past year is, years ago I would say, I only show up 80%, because 80% was a solid B in school, and that meant I wasn't going to get in trouble by my parents, specifically my mom. And then over the past couple of years, I was like, look, that doesn't work, bro. We got to go for more. We got to go at least 90, maybe 95. And then the last year I've been like, dude, we go to 100. We do everything with excellence, everything to 100%. And to finish this Vipassana retreat at 100% was one of the best things I have ever given myself. To just really complete something in full integrity was so beautiful. And that's how I show up for myself now, is I show up with full integrity, and I show up with full commitment, and I show up with full devotion. Not because of what someone's going to think, not because it looks better when I post it, but because I deserve that level of commitment in my life. I'm worth that level of detail, of output, of giving it my all. And yeah, to see myself on the last day, it was like, wow, dude, you're incredible, bro. You're incredible. Own this. Own it, dude. And so, yeah, the last thing I'll say about breaking the silence, the getting my phone back. We break down the whole thing. We take down the tents and we clean everything up, and they're like, last thing you get is your phone back. And some people were like, ugh, I don't want my phone. And I was like, why not? I was like, I love my life. I'm ready to get back to it. What's waiting for me is amazing. And I get my phone back and I turn my phone on and I have 222 notifications. Text messages, emails, all the sorts. And I go through them, not at the time, later, but when I went through them, every single one of them was a great message. None of them had fires that I had to put out. None of them were of concern. They were like, hey man, I've been thinking about you. I'd love to reconnect. Hey, how are you doing? I'm sorry I let our friendship fall away. All this stuff of just people and the ways in which I mattered in their lives and have contributed to them, and how good Luce was while I was gone, for my dog sitter and my parents. Are you done yet? And all of it, and I realized in that moment, I acclaim, this is my life. This is what I have created for myself. And it doesn't mean challenges don't arise, and it doesn't mean things don't go the way I want. It means that I am an active participant and creator in the life that I live, and I get to choose. And so, we leave, and my friend picks me up. One that dropped me off, he picks me up. And on the drive out, we're leaving, and I'm flying high. And then I had soft launched my coaching program, my new group offering, right before we left. And I was like, I'm going to check my bank account to see if anybody paid. Actually, I checked my email first, so I knew nobody paid. And I was like, I'm going to check my bank account to see how my bank looks, knowing that in a couple of days, my rent's going to hit, my credit card bills, all this stuff. And I opened my bank, and I realized in that moment, I don't have enough money in my account to cover all of my expenses for the next month. And I watch as my mind starts to swirl. My mind starts to say, are we going to be okay? All these things, right? And I realize in that moment, every other area of my life is in integrity except this one. That still, I have an opportunity in this moment to choose whether or not I'm going to keep making God, to keep making money my God. And I say, no, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm no longer going to worship money. I'm no longer going to equate my safety and security to money. I'm no longer going to I'm no longer going to buy peace of mind with money. I'm not doing it anymore. And I look at the bank account and okay, we'll deal with this. Close my phone, get back to living. And it was so interesting because, and I'm serious in that moment. I had investments in 401k, right? I could liquidate some things. But in that moment, the cash I had on hand, I did not have enough money in order to make this work. And so let's fast forward a couple days to Saturday. Saturday, I talked to my parents, and I hadn't talked to them yet, and they call me, and my mom's like, oh my God, how was it? And my dad in the background's like, I bet you can't shut up now, huh? And I was just like, no, actually, I haven't really talked that much. I've been pretty quiet since then. But I guess I could see why you'd think that, And so we get to talking or whatever, and I tell him about the experience and all the things that come up. I tell my mom about the itsy bitsy spider thing. She instantly, of course, I remember doing that to you. And she makes the little thing with her hands. I remember this vividly. And we get to talking or whatever. And then, the common question gets asked. So how's the coaching stuff going? How's your work? And I start with, honestly, it's going so well. My clients are making crazy strides and huge breakthroughs, and everybody's loving what they get and all this stuff. And, I haven't made any income this month, and I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. And in the past, my mom would commonly react and maybe go into fear and shame and pressure and, hey, Scott, you need to go get a job and all this stuff. And for the first time, she was like, Scott, you know what? I don't know how this is going to work, but it's going to work out. You're going to be okay. You're doing it. You are working so hard. I see what you're up to. You're crushing it. Like, just keep going. Don't even worry about that. Like, keep going. And I am shocked. I don't even know what to do. Like, I was gearing up for a battle. I put down my sword and my shield and I'm like, you know what? I'm like, you're right. I'm so committed to this. Like, I will give everything to make this thing work. This is why I'm on this planet. This is what I'm here to do. Like, I am so good at this. Yeah, you are, Scott. You're right. My dad chimes in. Same thing. Yeah, dude, this is it. This is your thing, man. Like, keep going for it. Like, you're on the path. And I am like being love bombed and affirmed by my parents more than I ever have. And my mom even says at one point, she goes, so what happens was, she goes, you know what, Scott, if we have to, we'll send you grocery money. Like, we'll pay your rent. Like, we've got you. You're not going to go without. Like, you're going to be okay. And I was like, wait, what? She's like, well, yeah, like, if we have to, we'll pay your rent. And I was like, wow, thanks. Like, I didn't know if you cared. And my mom was like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah, like, I just, honestly, I never would have asked you in the past. I would never have let you in to let you know that I was struggling. So you never would even have an opportunity to help me out. And she was like, Scott, of course we would help you. And I said, yeah, I get that now, but I didn't used to believe it. And she laughed again. She's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, Mom, when I was little, the only reason you cared is I was in pain. And I don't want to do that anymore. I want to live a beautiful life that I absolutely love. And I don't want it to be because I'm suffering and struggling and in pain. Like, and I get that now. I get that you would actually take care of me. And I get that I didn't let that possibility in. I didn't let you come to my aid because I was too afraid because of my childhood that you wouldn't. And I was crying. And she really got like, oh, wow, this guy's serious right now. Like, this has been a struggle for him. And I can even feel the emotions as I share it of like, repairing my relationship with my parents has been one of the utmost priorities. Not because I don't think that there were things that they dropped the ball on, but because I love them dearly. They were the first two humans I ever fell in love with. And to allow myself the opportunity to take responsibility for my own healing so that I could have that relationship with them while they're still alive has been one of my greatest gifts. I now have a relationship with my parents that like I really enjoy. I don't constrict and shrink when I see their phone, their name on my phone. I don't worry when I go visit them. I'm excited at the thought that they're going to come visit me. And I used to hate my parents. There was almost an entire year of my life where I didn't talk to them at all. And I had every evidence in the book. I had all the evidence I needed to cut them out of my life. But it never felt right. It never felt like the right thing to do. And I knew that I needed to take responsibility for my part of that conversation, that I couldn't force them into healing. And yet, when I led that charge, they chose to get on that train with me and take responsibility for their own part and where they dropped the ball and where they could have shown up better. And in that, I get now to have the most incredible relationship with them. This is why I do the work I do. Because I know so many people, they just want to know what to do to be okay in the world and keep the people in their life that they love. And so that conversation was probably one of the biggest takeaways I got from that Vipassana retreat, is how deep my parents care for me. I got that. They already knew that. I got that. I got to set down the evidence that they didn't. That some little boy in me was holding. Wow. Thank you for listening to that. Giving me the space to share. So where do we go from here? What does integration look like? I mean, part of the integration has been having those conversations in real time, right? Noticing, and I even said it when I was talking to my mom in that phone call. I was like, oh, wow, I can feel the emotions. I did it here on this one too. I said it, I can feel the emotions that are coming up, right? I've now been able to track the signature of sensations in my body to the point where I can speak them out and give them space. And then my body, as it witnesses it, expresses them. And that's the game here, right? Is to allow ourselves the ability to be all of ourselves as these things come through. And so post Vipassana, right? That was 2.5 weeks ago now. I've woken up every day, whether it's at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., and I sit for 30 minutes without question. I sit for 30 minutes. I prioritize my meditation over going to the gym. I prioritize my meditation over my work. I prioritize my meditation over my time with Luce. It is my number one. And I've said this for a long time. Meditation is more important to me than breath work. It's more important than yoga. It's more important than tennis. Like, meditation is my number one because it's a direct opportunity to give me time to myself. And so that's been the first and most important integration of this practice, has been committing to my meditation. The second has been my nutrition. And so still to this day, I have not reintroduced any bit of refined sugar. I have committed to a 6-month detox program that started yesterday. The first 2 months of it are an anti-inflammatory diet, which includes no extra sugar. And so I'm committing to practices that allow me to deeper instill this wisdom into my physical container, right? Because while my soul, my spirit, my essence isn't this body, it lives in this vehicle. And the more that I can take care of this vehicle, the easier time I have to be of service to God, to life. And this body responds to me versus tries to react and force me to do things. And so that has been what I'm up to now. It has been the opportunity for me to really stick to my word and commit to this. And yeah, if I had 3 major takeaways, it would be: give yourself the space to meet and know yourself, whatever that looks like. And notice the excuses and reasons that come up. Oh, I can't. My kids need me. Oh, I can't. I need to work. Oh, I can't. X, Y, or Z. And how long does that last? Oh, my kids need me, right? Okay, great. Well, once they go to college, then are you going to start? Then is it going to be time to choose you? Okay, they're not at home, they're at school. Now are you going to meditate? Now are you going to do that thing? Whatever your practice is. Meditate, breath work, walk, paint, read, journal, therapy. Right? What's it going to take for you to commit? Is it going to take you losing your health? Is it going to take you losing your relationship? Is it going to take you losing your job? What's it going to take for you to meet those parts of yourself that are truly asking for you? They're not here to mess with you. They're not here to hurt you. They're here for you to love them. So that's the first one. The second one is, and this is a Vipassana foundational teaching, is everything in life is a sensation or the search for it. Right? Even as I sit here recording, there is a bit of tension in my upper back. I can feel it right now as I speak. That is a sensation. That thought is a sensation. And learning how to sit with these things, even the bit of snot that's trying to run down my nose from crying, is a sensation. Can I be with that? Because that's how everything goes. The things I put in my Amazon cart last night that I'd like to buy, the desire to buy them, that's a sensation. Can I sit with that? And so just making that practice all areas of my life. And the last thing I would say is that I'm deeply committed to a practice of affirming that I love my life. I haven't shared much about this, but for most of my life, I haven't liked those words. The first time I said it, my girlfriend, or this girl I thought was my girlfriend or was dating, I found out she was dating a guy on the radio. That sucked. Another time I said it, I lost my job. Another time I said it, my dog died. Right? There was multiple other times I tried to affirm it in between there. They weren't good. And what I believed at the time was that life was showing me that I was a liar. Like, no, you don't. You don't love your life, bro. Look at this. Look at how you respond to life. I hate this. And so during the Vipassana retreat, I got to see that there was an opportunity to love my life no matter what. No matter what happens, choose to love it. This is my God-given gift. I love this thing. I love me. I love who I am. I love how I show up. I love how committed I am to helping myself, to helping other people, to sticking around and staying on this earth, to being of impact and service. I love this. I love my life. I declare that as my truth, as my reality. And so that's one of my practices now, is to cultivate and create the life I love, live it, share it, breathe it, own it. The podcast is an example of that. I love this thing. It is one of my favorite things to do, to host people, to have conversations with them, to get to know them on a deeper level, to get to see myself on a deeper level. I feel like one of the luckiest men alive. And so thank you for giving yourself the opportunity to listen to this, to find something in here for you, because I know it's packed with gold. At least for me. I hope it is for you too. So thank you for being here. Thank you for giving me your time, your attention, your presence, your own dedication to your craft, your impact, your dharma, why you chose this life, this human body that you're in, the family that you were born into, the skills and talents, passions that you have, because the world needs it real bad, more than ever probably. And maybe that's always the case, but it is time. It's time to show up and keep showing up. And so, yeah, again, just thank you. Thank you for being here on this journey with me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for any of you that leave a comment, like, subscribe, share, all that. I appreciate it so deeply. And yeah, with that, I hope you got something from this podcast. If you did, reach out and tell me about it. The Frozen Yogi on Instagram, the Common Thread podcast on Instagram. Share your learnings. And until the next time, stay curious, stay committed, and keep following the Common Thread. Thanks, y'all. Aloha.